London, 1918. The city is collapsing under the Spanish flu. Hospitals are overflowing. Bodies are piling up. And fear is everywhere. And in the middle of all this, you don't play as a hero. You play as a doctor who is also a vampire. Vampyr is a game about illness, morality, and choice, where saving lives and taking them are constantly in conflict. So the question is, does Vampyr's unique setting and ideas actually come together into a great game, or does it fall apart under its own ambition? Welcome to Login. Today I'm reviewing Vampyr, and I'll talk about why, despite its flaws, this is still a game worth playing, mainly because of how unique and interesting some of its systems really are. First, let's talk about the story and setting. You play as Jonathan Reed, a doctor who suddenly finds himself turned into a vampire. The game opens in a pretty shocking way, when you wake up confused, starving, and end up biting your own sister. From there, everything spirals very quickly. Soon after, you arrive at Pembroke Hospital, which becomes your main hub. This is where the game really starts asking uncomfortable questions. You're a doctor, sworn to save lives, but you're also a vampire who needs blood to survive. And that tension is what makes Vampyr's setting so interesting. Every NPC in the game is part of a district, and you get to interact with them in multiple ways. You can heal them, cure their illnesses, and keep the district healthy. Or you can choose to embrace them all, kill them, and gain a huge amount of experience in return. That experience can then be used to upgrade your health, stamina, or unlock powerful vampire abilities. The stronger you want to become, the more people you have to sacrifice. What makes this system even more interesting is that every NPC has a backstory. You can investigate them, learn about their past, uncover secrets, and doing so increases the amount of experience you gain if you eventually decide to kill them. So the game actively encourages you to get to know people before deciding their fate, which is honestly pretty messed up, but also really compelling. Narratively, the story is ambitious. You're trying to figure out who turned you into a vampire, what's really going on behind the plague, and how different factions fit into this collapsing version of London. The story isn't perfect, and there are moments where it loses momentum, but the strength of the setting does a lot of heavy lifting. Playing as a doctor and a vampire creates constant moral tension, and the world reacts to your decisions. If you kill too many people, districts fall into chaos. Enemies become more dangerous, and the city starts to feel genuinely hostile. On the other hand, if you try to save everyone, the game becomes much harder, but the world feels more stable. There are also multiple endings based on how you play, which adds replayability, whether you want to try a no-killing run or go fully dark and embrace being a monster. Overall, Vampyr is narratively ambitious, morally uncomfortable, and genuinely unique. Even when the story stumbles, the setting and core ideas are strong enough to keep this category as one of the game's highlights. But all of those ideas eventually have to be supported by gameplay, and that's where things get a bit more complicated. At its core, Vampyr is an action RPG with real-time combat and RPG systems underneath. You've got different types of weapons, both melee and range, including one-handed weapons, two-handed weapons, and firearms. On top of that, you're managing your health, stamina, and blood meter. Blood is especially important because it's used both to heal yourself and to activate your vampire abilities. Those abilities are some of the most interesting parts of the combat. But there's a catch. If you choose not to consume citizens and play more like a pacifist doctor, you'll be locked out of many of the strongest and most unique powers. You can still unlock some useful abilities, but the game definitely nudges you towards feeding if you want to feel truly powerful. The combat itself is decent, It works, but it can also feel a little bit clunky at times. There is some variety in how you approach fights. Different weapons have different effects. Some weapons are better at stunning enemies. Others help you drain blood more efficiently, which then lets you use more vampire skills. Enemies also have different weaknesses, so in theory, you're encouraged to adapt your approach depending on what you're fighting. Enemy types include humans, other vampires, or also called econs, skull, and even few werewolf-like enemies. That said, the overall enemy variety isn't huge, and over time you start seeing the same encounters repeated. Early on, I actually enjoyed the combat quite a bit because of the variety. But as I played more, I realized I could rely on very simple and very effective strategy, using a two-handed weapon to stun enemies, biting them to drain blood, recovering stamina while feeding, and then repeating the cycle. It works extremely well, and once I discovered that loop, a lot of combat depth kind of disappeared. That doesn't mean combat isn't bad, it just means it loses some of its excitement over time. Fighting enemies is still very satisfying, and some of the boss fights do offer a decent challenge, especially if you're under-leveled because you have chosen not to feed on civilians. One mechanic I really like though is how leveling works. You can only level up when you sleep. And when you do, the game processes all the consequences of your actions. Districts change, NPCs may die, situations evolve, so even sometimes as simple as leveling up is tied back into the game's themes of moral systems, which I think is a really smart design choice. Overall, the gameplay and combat in Vampyr are functional and sometimes fun, but not the main reason to play the game. They support the experience rather than carry it, and how much you enjoy them will really depend on how you engage with the game's moral systems and self-imposed limitations. Next, let's talk a bit about the world itself, the visuals, the art style, the music, and how the game actually runs. The world in Vampyr isn't huge, but it's decently sized and built around several hub areas. There is quite a bit of backtracking, and the level layouts can feel repetitive over time, but the environments do a really good job supporting the atmosphere. Visually, the game looks good, though nothing extraordinary. What really carries it is the art direction. Early 1900s London feels moody, dark, and oppressive, and the city generally looks like it's suffering under a pandemic. Streets feel empty, sick, and uneasy, which fits the tone of the game extremely well. Character models are decent but uneven. Some facial animations can feel a bit stiff or cold, especially in side characters, but overall, the visuals serve the tone and the themes effectively, even if they don't always impress on a technical level. Sound and music are actually an underrated strength. The soundtrack is subtle, melancholic, and atmospheric, and it fits the mood of the game really well. Sound design also plays a big role in reinforcing tension and unease as you move through the city.
I fear Edgar tops their bloody list.
Bridget. She is such a tragic figure.
Voice acting can be uneven, but the main characters perform really well and are engaging to listen to. When it comes to performance and stability, this is where things get a bit more mixed. On PC, the game tends to run better on Nvidia cards. On my system, with an AMD GPU, even a very powerful one, the game struggled to run smoothly without tweaking hidden settings. On my laptop, with an RTX 3070 Ti, it ran smoothly with no major issues. Console performance is generally fine, and on a handheld like the ROG Ally, the game is playable, but I wouldn't really recommend it. Especially since the game lacks features like FSR that could really help the performance. So with all that in mind, let's break Vampyr down using my rubric and see where it actually lands overall. And now it's time to give Vampyr its final score. Let's start with the story and setting. this is the strongest part of Vampyr for me. The story isn't perfect, and by the end I wasn't equally invested in every character, but overall it's engaging and easy to get pulled into. Many characters stand out early on, and deciding who to heal or consume makes the story feel personal. The setting really shines. Plague-ridden London during the Spanish flu, combined with being both a doctor and a vampire, is genuinely unique concept. The atmosphere and moral tension work extremely well, so story and setting get a 9 out of 10. And gameplay and controls, this isn't the strongest part of Vampyr, but it's solid enough. Combat works, though it can feel a little bit uneven, and I often fell into repeatable attack and bite loops. Vampire abilities add some variety, but balance can be inconsistent and combat doesn't evolve much over time. But overall, gameplay and controls land at 7 out of 10. Game and level design is a mixed bag. There's a lot of backtracking and environments start to blend together after a while. But what really helps is how NPCs affect the world. Districts feel different depending on who you help and who survives, even if the physical layouts don't change much. Because of that, I'm giving game and level design an 8 out of 10. And then player choice and play styles. This one is really interesting. There are a few meaningful narrative choices and multiple endings, but the most important decisions are tied to NPCs. Who you cure, help, or consume affects districts, their health, and how the world reacts to you. Combat offers a little bit of flexibility as well, even if the systems are fairly simple. But because of those NPCs are so well done, a player choice and play styles gets an 8 out of 10. And then graphics and art style. Visually, Vampyr is starting to show its age a little bit, but the atmosphere still works very well. The art direction and lighting do a great job setting the mood. Facial animations, yeah, and the character models feel dated, but everything is serviceable. So that's why graphics and art style get a 7 out of 10. And then for the performance, this one is a bit of a mixed bag as well. It struggles. On Nvidia hardware, it ran mostly fine, but AMD systems were more problematic. There's also no FSR or DLSS, which makes it harder to get good performance on devices like the ROG Ally. And even on my powerful desktop, it struggled to run smoothly because it was poorly optimized, and I had to go on YouTube to search for tutorials to find some secret settings to make the game run better, but even then it wasn't perfect. So because of that, performance and stability only gets a 6 out of 10. Sound, music, and voice acting actually works really well. The music sets the mood nicely, and the sound design supports both combat and exploration. Most of the voice acting is actually really strong, with only a few weak performances there and there. So this category gets an 8 out of 10. Innovation and creativity. Combat itself isn't particularly innovative, but where Vampyr stands out is its NPC system, like I mentioned many times already. So deciding who to heal, spare, or consume directly affects progression and district health, which feels genuinely creative. Also, the setting itself I think is very creative, being a doctor and a vampire at the same time. So innovation and creativity gets an 8 out of 10. And length and value. So in terms of length and value, I enjoyed my time with Vampyr and felt I got my money's worth, especially for a story-driven AA RPG. There's enough content to stay engaging without overstaying its welcome. So the length and value get an 8 out of 10. And fun and engagement, this is my personal opinion. Early on, I really loved this game. I was very close to giving this a 9 out of 10, but towards the end, I think I lost my interest a little bit. Maybe there were too many new NPCs and maybe I didn't really care about them as much anymore. But overall, still an enjoyable, fun game. So I will give it an 8 out of 10. Putting all that together, Vampyr gets a final score of 77 out of 100. And that's a good game. I would definitely recommend it if this game seems interesting to you. And I think there's a clear target audience for this game. If you enjoy dark, story-driven games with moral choices, vampires, and a unique historical setting, this is worth checking out. If gameplay depth is your top priority, it might not fully click. That said, the game is often heavily discounted, and at around 80% off, it's an easy recommendation. Alright, that was my review of Vampyr. Thank you for watching. This was my third video on YouTube. I'm still learning, getting better, and every time I see a new person to subscribe, right now I think I have 8 subscribers. Woohoo! I only need 2 more subscribers to be the biggest YouTuber of my family. My father has 9 subscribers. He likes to post a lot of videos of his farm, his sheep. But every time someone likes and comments, it feels really special. So thank you for supporting a small new YouTuber like me. That really, really means a lot. All right, I'll see you next time. Remember to log in.